distinguished state and local officials, community leaders, members, veterans, and friends of Naval Submarine Base New London, our submarine force, our great Navy and Armed Forces, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Submarine Force Museum. I am Lieutenant Commander Derek Sutton, Director of the Submarine Force Museum and Officer in charge of the historic ship Nautilus. I will be serving as the Master of Ceremonies today. Today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Midway, a turning point in the Second World War and a shift in the strategic balance as the United States and Allies battled Japan. We also commemorate D-Day, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France during the Second World War and the beginning of the end of the war in Europe. Nations go to war, but it's a nation's local communities and citizens who ensure our victory, answering the call to arms, sustaining industry and livelihood, and sacrificing to support those in uniforms, their families, and the war effort. The Second World War is no different than today in that regard. 80 years ago, the great peril was Japanese imperialism and German fascism. Defending freedom and democracy were our nation's service members, citizens, and communities. Today, they still form the heartbeat and backbone of this great nation. So it is indeed fitting now to honor them and our United States of America. Will guests please rise for the presentation of colors by the Naval Submarine School Silver Dolphin Color Guard and remain standing for our national anthem. Color Guard, parade the colors.
Parade the colors high. Color Guard, attention. Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Forward. Cut.
And salute.
Color Guard, go. Left. Face. Freeze. Cut.
Color Guard, retire the colors.
Retire the colors high. Carry. Going. Ready. Cut. Right. Face. Forward. Cut.
Ready, 2. Thank you, Silver Dolphins. Please be seated. On May 29th, 1942, in the days just before the epic battle that would become known as the Battle of Midway, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, rode to Admiral Ernest J. King, the Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations. He relayed, and I'll quote, "We are actively preparing to greet our expected visitors with the kind of reception they deserve." That reception that Admiral Nimitz spoke of, and the actions of the sailors and Marines who provided it, is one of our nation's great World War II stories. The Battle of Midway was an improbable victory for our Navy. Our force was small, not battle-hardened, and stood in the face of the might of the Japanese Imperial Navy. It was the determination and courage of our sailors and Marines that turned the tide. For many years, a Battle of Midway submarine veteran was a stalwart local participant of this annual commemoration, retired Master Chief Dean Brown. While Master Chief is no longer with us, his stories and recollection of that battle live.
Admiral, distinguished participants, guests, and especially the family, welcome. I'm honored to join you and recount the story of one young sailor in the Battle of Midway. Before I do, I'm the sub-school CMC, so I just gotta, can we give it up for my Silver Dolphins? I'm running out of time to do that. I transfer in the end of June here, so I'm running out of time to celebrate them, but they do so many things, it's pretty exciting. Anyway, back to the Battle of Midway. In June of 1942, Dean Brown from Shell City, Missouri was a junior radioman stationed aboard USS Trout, SS-202. He had no idea that the three-day Battle of Midway, the turning point of the Pacific during World War II, would commence June 4th at 04:30 in the morning. He knew only that the Trout left Pearl Harbor for Midway. Just 2 of the submarine 4 engines were online. The others had suffered damage as submarine had raced across the Pacific, supporting the famed Doolittle raids in April 1942. For those who may not recall, the Doolittle raids were when 16 U.S. Army Air Force B-25 bombers were launched from aircraft carrier U.S. Hornet deep in the western Pacific Ocean. Those bombers, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Jimmy Doolittle, conducted the first air raid by the United States to strike the Japanese homelands. So as Trout headed towards the Midway to join submarine task group 7.1 and 11, other U.S. submarines, all hands worked to get Trout's other 2 engines back online. Like any dedicated crew committed to an arduous task, they were successful, and when Trout reached Midway, all 4 engines were back in service. The Battle of Midway would play out as an aerial conflict more than a surface or subsurface engagement. But during the Battle of Midway, Trout continued to provide screening west of the island, and the crew had their work cut out for them. The radioman had to copy 25 words per minute of Morse code. No easy feat. I mean, I'm an ex-A ganger and I don't even know what that means, but no easy feat according to Master Chief Brown. 3 days after the battle, the USC GC Taney was conducting search and rescue with USS service members. U.S. Trout found 2 Japanese sailors among the debris of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Heavy cruiser Makuma on June 9th. Dehydrated and badly sunburned, the Japanese chief radioman and fireman 3rd class were pulled from the water and given care aboard Trout until they could be taken to Pearl Harbor to be hospitalized. Radioman Brown served on Trout until just before it left for its 11th patrol. He was at an electronics training school when Trout was declared presumed lost with all 81 hands, April 8th, 1945. After the war, Master Chief Brown stayed Navy, and as the ranks of Senior Chief and Master Chief were created in June 1958, he became one of the first sailors to take Master Chief without even being a senior chief. Following his naval career, Master Chief Brown joined Electric Boat for 24 years, retiring in 1987. A proud submarine veteran, he enthusiastically participated in the submarine veterans of the World War II and subvets organizations. His quiet dignity, robust constitution, and fierce patriotism were the bedrock of this annual event. One man's story, but our history, a history we may never forget. So today we fondly remember Master Chief Dean Brown's service and that of his shipmate 80 years ago that made the sacrifice that secured our nation's freedom and world peace, and he left an enduring legacy for us to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Chief. We are honored to be joined by Master Chief Brown's children today, daughters Jessica and Lina, and son Philip. And so I'll now ask Jessica, Lina, and Philip to join Admiral and Master Chief Lee to place some flowers upon the flames. We lay these flowers in tribute of the great service and sacrifice of Master Chief Brown, our Midway veterans, and all who contributed so mightily to this American naval victory. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Our ceremony here takes place in concert with many similar ceremonies throughout our Navy and around the world. In doing so, we revere all those who have served or are serving with honor, courage, and commitment. We pause now to remember and respect the spirit of Midway in our Navy and our nation, and ask our young bagpiper, Jackson LaFlash, to play Amazing Grace. Thank you, Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The story of Master Chief Dean Brown and all our nation's bold and courageous submariners is important and impactful. British statesman Winston Churchill wrote, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." To provide a brief overview of the history and lessons of the Battle of Midway, please join me in welcoming the Commander, Undersea Warfighting Development Center, headquartered here on Subbase, Rear Admiral Marty Muckian.
Hey, good morning, everyone. And what a beautiful day. And can we give it up for Jackson? That did a great job with the... Hey, today we're here to commemorate the Battle of Midway. As Derek said, it was an improbable victory, but a stunning victory that every year is rightly commemorated all across the Navy and Marine Corps. I've been part of these events for years now. And to fully understand what this victory meant to us, you have to come back to 1942, 6 months after the Battle of Pearl Harbor. Right? During that battle, the entire U.S. Navy battle line was effectively destroyed. There was no major force that was available in the Pacific to oppose the Japanese. And as they conquered the Eastern Asia and the Pacific Islands, we were battered, we were on the ropes, but we didn't give up as they expected us to, as they hoped we would. So America was resilient. We had improvised, adapted, dug in, and overcome. So our Navy, our Marine Corps, came up with new tactics to make up for the loss of the battle line. And even our nation, our civilian workers, found new ways to innovate and adapt to the circumstances that war brought on them. And I think a story related to the Battle of Midway, the story of the USS Yorktown, is a great example. So Yorktown, an aircraft carrier, a month before the Battle of Midway, was in the Battle of Coral Sea in the South Pacific. It was hit by a Japanese bomb which exploded inside, badly damaging the ship. On May 27th, just days before the Battle of Midway, Yorktown limped into Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. We needed her for the fight, but the estimate said it would take months to repair that ship. We didn't have months, we had days. And so the civilian shipyard workers swarmed aboard. They worked 24/7. And in a little over 48 hours, that ship was back out to sea and joining her sister ships for the Battle of Midway. Right? That was the first of several man-made miracles that turned the tide in the Battle of Midway. And, Dean Brown was a member of the EB staff. We might have some other EB veterans or current workers here. And that EB continues the proud legacy of those shipyard workers, those very skilled tradesmen that put Yorktown back in the fight for the Battle of Midway. Another man-made miracle was we were able to crack the Japanese codes, and cracking those codes told us that the Japanese was coming with full strength, 4 major carriers and a bunch of light carriers, a huge fleet, and their plan was to lure what remains of the U.S. Navy out to Midway, ambush it, and destroy it. So, we had the codes, but there's a long way between understanding your adversary's intentions to be able to thwart it. So, prevailing over the enemy required bold leadership, skillful disposition of our forces, and moreover required the courage of each individual sailor marine to do their duty in the face of overwhelming odds. Right? And the record of those 3 days showed that they met that challenge. From our leaders like Admiral Chester Nimitz to Colonel Shannon, the commander of the garrison there on Midway, down to individual Marines and sailors like Radioman Dean Brown on the USS Trout. The record shows that they did their duty, they met the challenge, and they prevailed and overcame their adversary. On that day, 4 June 1942, aircraft from 3 U.S. aircraft carriers, Hornet, Yorktown, Enterprise, found the Japanese fleet and sank all 4 major carriers. That gutted the Japanese Imperial Navy, forced them to withdraw from the Battle of Midway, and really set the stage for their demise throughout the Western Pacific. It was an improbable and stunning victory. But so Battle of Midway had a big impact on the tide in the Pacific, but it was not the end. So to steal another phrase from Winston Churchill, Midway was not the end, the beginning of the end, but it was, let's say, the end of the beginning. Now, the main part of the battle happened on 4 June. Today is 6 June, which marks another stunning anniversary. On 6 June 1944, Allied forces crossed the English Channel and landed in northern France in the largest amphibious invasion in history. At the time, it was known as Operation Overlord. Today, we just call it D-Day. Right? So on that day, 7,000 ships and landing craft landed 150,000 fighting men under withering fire on beaches that have become legendary, like Omaha, Utah. Right? And they prevailed, and they lodged a foothold in Nazi-occupied France, and that was the beginning of the end of the war in Europe. So from Midway to D-Day was 2 long years. In that time, we sacrificed, we persevered, and ultimately, as our presence here indicates, we overcame. So today we honor the courage of those who left home to fight in faraway battles like Midway and Normandy. We honor their courage, and we can never forget those who sacrificed their lives there. So as much as we celebrate these great victories, let's never forget those who died to make them possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. As a nation, we are eternally grateful for all those bold and courageous service members at Midway and on D-Day, and for all that have gone before us, enduring the hardships, battles, and sacrifice. As a community, let us continue to come together to tell the stories, honoring those lost, those who survived, and those who, on the front lines or in support, have made such a difference for our submarine force and Navy. I would now like to call upon our Naval Submarine Base New London Staff Chaplain, Lieutenant Kenneth Bomberger, to offer a prayer so that our nation and Navy may never forget. Please rise. Chaplain?
Shall we pray? Almighty, everlasting God, on this day I thank you for the valor of each one who valued not their own life, but placed himself in danger's way for the sake of his comrades in arms, for the sake of fellow service members, and for the sake of nations oppressed by warfare. Instill into our own heart such valor, that we may continue to value the well-being of others above our own comfort, and to act in accordance with such value. Forge us into worthy inheritors of the legacy made by all those who sailed, flew, fought, bled, and laid down their life in just cause. Hallow their memory. Thank you for all who gave the ultimate cost, whether imprisoned to set at liberty the oppressed, or wounded to protect the weak and defenseless, or died to make better this life for all humanity. You have our deep gratitude for their selflessness, service, and sacrifice. Guard today all those who support our warfare efforts, from the silent service to those who fly above, to those who sail upon the sea. Take care of all those who care for our forward deployed individuals, and bless in all our time all those who support service members in body, mind, and soul, and their families. Make our nation united and strong. Bless our leaders with holy wisdom and just judgment. Guard our families, keep safe our service members, and let your blessings rain down upon our land of patriots and heroes, civilians and citizens. O Lord, Almighty God, bless our America. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please be seated. And now, to lift us in spirit as one beautiful nation, preserved and protected by the service and sacrifice of our Navy and all our nation's armed forces, I ask Jackson once again to play his pipes. Ladies and gentlemen, how about another round of applause for Jackson? So Jackson is a 6th grader from Leonard J. Tile Middle School in Oakdale. His proud mom is Heather LaFlash, Assistant Youth Director at our sub-base Child and Youth Program. Jackson is a member of the program's Boys and Girls Club of America chapter, and he was selected as one of 10 youths nationwide to showcase his musical talent at the Boys and Girls Club of America National Conference this year. He also played in the Hall of Heroes at the Pentagon. He's added so much to today's commemoration that we think it's fitting to take a moment and pass along a special recognition from the Boys and Girls Club of America. Jackson, would you come forward, please? And to represent Subbase and the Subbase Child Youth Program, I ask Executive Officer Commander Reg Preston step over, to join Admiral Muckian in presenting Jackson with this Apple iPad from the Boys and Girls Club as a token of the club's esteem. Heather, will you please come up and join your son and the Admiral for a photo? What a great way to finish a ceremony that has touched on honor, courage, and commitment, faith, family, and flag. As we conclude, allow me to thank the Submarine Force Museum team for facilitating today's ceremony and for helping our Navy and Submarine Force preserve our history and tell our nation's bold and courageous stories, such as the Battle of Midway and D-Day. May we never forget such service and sacrifice. As you depart, we invite all of you to enjoy some cupcakes and reflection. Have a great Navy Day.